What fuels you? What makes you go? Every one of us in this room today is a unique person, a unique individual with a unique story. So in a sense, the answers might be different for all of us. But can I suggest two words that I think are universally true for every person, or at least every person living in the Western world, whether you were born here or emigrated here? One of the words is probably in the list of the first 10 words you ever learned to say. The words more and the words next. I mean, we literally taught our kids sign language for more. Can I have more? A little more food. More and next are really powerful fuel for you in life. Very useful, very necessary. More is what helps you maybe get out of bed in the morning to get an education and maybe get a job. Maybe it's what gets you to go to the gym to put on a little more muscle so you can turn the head of that girl that you hope will notice you and one day might marry you so you could build a life together. Maybe it's what makes you do those Bach jumps so you can get just a little higher on your vertical to make the team. Maybe a little more education or a little more opportunity. More is a really powerful fuel for us as we are starting out, especially in the beginning of our life. And then as we get to more, let's say, what's next? This milestone, that milestone, this achievement, what is next? More and next continue to move us forward in life in a very effective way. In fact, they're actually what propel our economy forward. And maybe many economic theories are based on this fact that as each individual is driven along by more and next, the economy as a whole grows. It's an effective fuel. But the truth is this: what fuels you can also fail you. What fuels you can also fail you. The language that we are using in this series that we've just started over the last couple of weeks is this: that you can use something effectively that is a fuel, but that you end up making into an artificial God. A God that fails you because it can't deliver what you hope it will. And that may be strange language for some of you, especially you're like, hey, I'm just checking out faith. I'm new to church. Maybe this is your first time in a long time. Maybe someone brought you. Or if you're sort of saying, no, I worship God, that's why I'm here, this idea of an artificial God in my life, what is that really about? But we're actually taking the time to peel the layers. As just as universal are the words more and next in life, so is this temptation that we can actually take something good and make it into a God and expect it to do for us what it was never meant to do. The passage of scripture that we're using that gives us a visual kind of metaphor for this that I'm going to use every week because it's something I said to you when I first read it. The first time I read it, I've never forgotten it. This image has stayed in my mind, and it's actually been really helpful for me in this process of realizing that sometimes some of the symptoms of disappointment, anger, rage, frustration, conflict, anxiety, stress, and worry in my life might be, and maybe this is true for you, and so maybe this is exactly what you need to hear today, that some of those things might be symptoms that tell me that even though those are common symptoms, that maybe I am looking to something to deliver that can't actually do it, that I'm trusting in something that isn't real enough or God enough to actually come through for me. And here's the passage of scripture, and if you've never heard this before, perhaps you've heard it again. Probably, I'm hoping you never forget this. It's written by a man named Isaiah who was a prophet. The prophets were meant to call God's people back to some things that they had forgotten, in a sense, call them back to God, to help them see things that maybe in their everyday life they weren't seeing, that were actually really significant, that were actually pulling them away from the life and the joy and the goodness that God had for them. And listen to what he says in chapter 44 of this visual metaphor of how what fuels us might actually end up failing us. He says this: the wood carver cuts down cedars, he selects the cypress and the oak, he plants the pine in the forest to be nourished by the rain. Then he uses part of the wood to make a fire. With it, he warms himself and bakes his bread. That's fuel. Then, yes, it's true, he takes the rest of it, the rest of the thing that is fuel, and makes himself a god to worship. He makes an idol and bows down in front of it. He says it again. He burns part of the tree as fuel, some of your translations say, to roast his meat and to keep himself warm. And he says, that fire feels good. This is useful, helpful, necessary. But then he takes what's left and makes his God out of that same fuel, a carved idol. He falls down in front of it, worshiping and praying to it. Rescue me, he says. You are my God. It's possible, based on this passage, is what we're saying, to make a good thing a God thing. It's possible to take something that is a useful fuel and end up trusting in it to save us. And this is what we've been unpacking, this idea, like, although this experience of bowing down to a piece of wood or a carved God made out of stone, maybe that's part of it's certainly part of my ancestral tree. Maybe for some of you that's in your past, but it's probably not in your common everyday life here living in the Western world. But the principle of it is alive and well in every home, in every life, in every heart. That there are things that we look to that are good and useful and necessary and helpful, but we can trust in them more than we should. We can put our weight on them and depend on them to deliver things they were never meant to deliver. And we'll find out that they were artificial gods in the end. And the prophet is commenting on the fact that he's like, that's why he says, yes, it's true. Don't you see, if you read the rest of the passage, this is around us. It's not something that's easy to see because what we're dealing with are things that aren't evil in and of themselves. An idol is not an evil thing. It's a good thing that we turn into a God thing. It's a useful, necessary, common, helpful thing that we put weight on that was never meant to carry or hold us up. And this is true for people who live in a world and an economy and in a life motivated by more and next. As we're asking this question, how do I know I'm succeeding in life? How do I know I'm succeeding in life? And in many respects, this idea of more and next is how we define, or the fuel to achieve success. How do I know I'm succeeding in life? We talked about the fact that it's possible to have fuel to move towards that actually isn't end up being useful in the end, that it actually fails us. And a couple weeks ago, we talked about the fact that we can take something like money, which is a very good, useful tool, and often can be used as a measure of success, and say it's useful, but we don't just use it, we trust it. And when we trust it to do things for us it can never do, we will find that it failed us. But money isn't actually the only measurement of success. If we ask ourselves, how do I know I'm living a successful life? How do I know I'm succeeding in life? Money may be one of the measures, but there's actually three other measures that we look at, words that are that we use to say, how do I know I'm succeeding in life, that can be good but aren't good enough to be God? Achievement, approval, and recognition. Achievement, approval, recognition, measures of success that can be useful fuel, but can end up being a God that fails. They're useful, they're good. Achievement, we say like accomplishing goals, reaching milestones, ambition is a very good thing. As I said, some of us are wired by measure. We're measures people, we're number people, we're achievement people. If you do the Enneagram, you're the Enneagram 3, that's an achiever. My wife, I'm married to an achiever, likes to measure and has goals and is motivated by it. And that's a helpful fuel. And achievement, even if you're not a numbers or goal-oriented person, is a good thing. It's actually not good if you're feeling aimless, if you have no interest in accomplishing or achieving anything. We would look at that, whether you're a young person or older person, and go, that's not a good thing. That is going to drain you. That's going to ruin your life. You actually need to have achievement. So getting the hit or the dopamine or the enjoyment of reaching a milestone, of getting past, saying, man, I had set out this goal and I achieved it for myself, setting milestones and I passed that, having an ambition, say, I'd love to do this, dreams and goals and plans, and here's how I'm going to get here, and this is where I'm going to go, can be a very useful, effective tool. Likewise with approval, let's say affirmation and praise. It's a really good thing. In fact, we know it's a really essential thing for children when they're young, growing up in a home where their parents verbally affirm them, use their words to demonstrate and show love. It's good to have people and friends in our lives who express their that they like us, that they like being around us, who give us a sense of like a well-being and enjoyment of ourselves when someone says, "Oh, I really like this," or "Thank you for that." Words of appreciation, affirmation, encouragement. "Oh, you posted that picture. I like that." There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually really good. It gives us a sense of like that we're valuable or we're valued by other people. Like this is a very good thing to have affirmation and praise. And in fact, homes, marriages, churches, workplaces, where there aren't regular words of affirmation and praise shared, we would say that those aren't good places. Those are unhealthy places, or there's something wrong with that, or they're going to be lacking in their sense of connectedness and love. Affirmation, approval is a good thing. Likewise, so is recognition, right? For what we've done or achieved. To know that we made an impact, that the other people cared. Some of us on the achievement are just motivated. It's our own ambition and goals that we're just happy if we achieved it. But others of us are motivated by that sense of recognition. Like somebody cared, somebody saw, I got this award, I was given a ceremony, somebody sent me a note, or it was an article written in the local school paper, the news, or whatever it is, or at church, somebody called it out and thanked you. That's a recognition thing. That can be a very healthy thing to be motivated by that and be very effective. All of these things, right, as it relates to more next, achievement, approval, recognition can be very effective in moving us on in life. But just like the wood carver who takes this fuel, which is very useful for warming his hands and burning his bread, but then turns to this thing and says, "Save me," just like the wood carver does that, we also can be tempted to take these things that are useful and effective fuel, achievement, approval, recognition, and turn to them and say, "Save me, save me." You may think, well, how are we thinking that those things will actually save us? What is it that those things offer to save us from? And this is where, if we don't understand it, we don't understand how these things might be at play, how we might be taking something that's useful for fuel, but will fail us as a God. What are they saving us from? What does achievement, approval, recognition save us from? Insignificance, insecurity, rejection, anxiety, unworthiness, just to name a few. These are the things, look at those words, insignificance, insecurity, rejection, anxiety, unworthiness. These are the things we look to save us. Right? If we had dealt with rejection when we were young, then the approval of other people becomes something not just that's nice to have and motivating, it'll save us from feeling like we're worthless. If we were bullied when we were younger, if we were not included, if we were excluded based on our skin color or our body weight, whether we had too much of it or too little of it, or our hair or how we looked, or the clothes that we were able to afford or not, or the place that we immigrated from, or how we fit in, if we were bullied like that or excluded, then this idea of being approved by a group of people or in our church or whatever will not just be a healthy thing, it's something we need to heal deep wounds from our past. If we had a sense of like growing up in a home where we didn't hear a lot of words of affirmation or approval, we only heard when we screwed up, we will be afraid of failing all the time. It will be very hard for us to hear actually words of praise or approval from other people because we just don't know what those sound like. If we perhaps grew up in a home or grew up in a culture, maybe many of us, it was our parents emigrated to this country and they worked and worked and worked to achieve the milestones. And that became a self-evident goal that the way to be a valid person is to achieve. It's to say, oh, you're going to be the first one in our family to go to college, or we worked hard so you could do this thing. Like the achievement becomes a self-evident goal in the end to say we've arrived. And if we're afraid of not having enough money or afraid that we made the wrong decision of moving our family here, how much achievement will ever be enough? It'll never be enough. Or the recognition, or perhaps no one says they want to be famous. I just want to be recognized for what I've done, right? And if we feel like we've been passed over, or maybe when we were younger we've been passed over, well, then we really want our kids to be recognized, and we're really annoyed if they put them at the back of the row in the kids' choir because they're a way better singer than that other kid, or how come they didn't make that team? Or perhaps we have that saying of like, I'm doing all this stuff and nobody seems to care. Recognition can be a good thing, but if we're looking at it to make us feel like we're a valid person, like we're worth something, that we've actually arrived, we'll be looking to it for more than it can actually deliver. Friends, this is different for every one of us because our wounds and our stories and our needs are different. It looks like different things in different people, but it's possible that for all of us, we're taking something that's a helpful fuel, and it'll be a God that fails us. Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time. Don't at me about this, Kay. I really don't want to hear. Don't be distracted by it. I get into arguments with my kids at the dinner table every day of the LeBron Jordan debate. But just give me this for a moment. Here's a picture of Jordan holding up the number 5 at the end of his 5th championship. And you can see he's in front in this picture in front of like adoring fans. And at this point in his life, Jordan was probably the largest global sports icon the world had ever known. Hundreds of millions of fans around the world watched him, adored him, wore 23 around their neck or wore the jersey or whatever. And he had accomplished and achieved more than any basketball player in one sense at that time, all the records he was breaking and the things that he was doing, and just even his stardom across the world was unprecedented. And it was an incredible achievement as he's holding up that number 5. Later in the locker room, and I remember watching this live on TV. It was before Toronto had a basketball team, so I loved the Bulls. And I remember this picture of him, the cameras catching him live, lying on the floor later on in the locker room, holding a basketball, holding his championship hat, weeping. Sobbing, in fact. And I remember the sounds. You could even hear it, even through the news cameras in the locker room, his weeping. And I and many others in the commentators said, wow, this is so powerful. This must be his most meaningful championship because it was on Father's Day, a little while after he had lost his father, and there was much made about him losing his father and his dad and their relationship. And this must be so much more meaningful to him. But I remember that, and the crying kind of haunted me. And years later, it came back to mind when I was watching the documentary that some of you watched called The Last Dance that was released about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. And Jordan in this documentary is 50-something, and he's being interviewed, and he recalls, kind of out of the blue, this memory he had with his dad. When Jordan was 10 years old and he was working in the garage with his dad on something, it was a car or something, and he said, I didn't know how to help and fix things, and I wanted to help my dad, and I wanted to show him that I could be useful. And he said, at one point my dad got so frustrated with me, he said, just go in the house with the women. Just go in the house with the women. Here's 50-something-year-old Michael Jordan, one of the most, if not the greatest basketball player of all time, one of the most widely recognized people, and one of the memories he has from his childhood is his father rejecting him. A little while later, I read this quote from Dolores Jordan, Michael's sister. She said this, each accomplishment that he achieved was his battle cry for defeating my father's negative opinions about him. Each, read the words, accomplishment he achieved. 5, 6 championships. Broken records, more famous than anyone in the world at that time, near the highest earners in the world, breaking records for sponsorship deals with shoes and merchandise. Every accomplishment he achieved was his battle cry for defeating my father's negative opinions about him. And I wondered whether those tears on the floor of that locker room were not just that he missed his dad, but that he would never have a chance to be able to defeat any more negative opinions that his father had about him. I don't know this for sure, but I wonder if amidst the hundreds of millions of people who approved of him, there was only one person whose approval he wanted, and it was the one he felt like he could never get. And that fuel drove him to compete and compete and compete. It's what his family noticed, and in fact, if you listen to the documentary, it's one of the things that his teammates said about him. He was really great at winning. Competition, this was a very effective fuel, but it was destructive. It was a God that failed him. It actually destroyed some of the relationships that he had. At one point in the documentary, he says, turn it off. He was crying when he heard some of the opinions that his teammates, that he thought would love him for all the championships he helped them win. But in the end, one of the things they also remember was how hard he was to play with and to be around and to compete with. Something that is really effective for fuel, but destructive in life can end up being a God that fails us. That's his story. What's yours? What's mine? Maybe easier to see for a very famous person, but every one of us has those wounds, those parts of our stories, those things that are fueling us in life, in achievement and what we want to accomplish, and the goals and the milestones and ambition, or the approval, the recognition, the words, the likes and follows and subscribers, whatever, of other people, or the I know I did something, somebody acknowledged what I did, I was recognized for the work that I did. Those are things that are not just fuel, they could be gods that are failing us because we need them to heal us or to save us from our insecurity, our insignificance, our unworthiness, our anxiety, our lack of peace, our relentless drive to prove ourselves to ourselves or somebody else. So just take a couple minutes before we go on to talk about the better way that God offers us in Jesus, to just reflect. What metrics, achievements, or goals am I looking at regularly or working hard to reach? What are the ones that are important to me in my school, in my work, in my life, or in kind of my lifestyle? What achievements or goals am I looking to? Whose opinions, evaluations, or words carry, if I can say, maybe too much weight? Like, it doesn't matter how many people give me positive words or approval, but if this person doesn't, or if that person, or I can hear all this stuff, but I heard this thing and I can't forget it. And maybe I heard it like, maybe it was like a 50-year-old person recounting a 10-year-old or a 40-year-old conversation. Maybe it's something you remember. You're like, why do I remember that conversation with my grandfather or my mom or my sibling or my teacher or my best friend years later? Whose words are carrying too much weight? What measures of recognition, likes, shares, followers, awards, promotions really matter to me? And then this all-important question, why? Why don't you just take a couple minutes now just to reflect on those? Our stories may differ, they all do. But in some ways, all of us have some experience of maybe feeling rejected or unloved, or the words of approval that we needed, we got from certain people, but not from others. Or perhaps we were just taught that the value you have in life is what you can achieve, what you can accomplish, or it isn't worth anything unless somebody else notices, or these people's words and these people's evaluation become really important, it's the external stuff. Whatever your story is different than mine, but it affects us all in some way. And the truth is, when disappointments come, when we experience a failure or a setback, or a lack of approval or recognition, or when we realize, like, why I've heard all these positive words, why can't I get this one conversation out of my head? Why am I staying up at night stressing about this thing? This is more than normal stress about exams or a job interview. Or why am I so angry that I keep getting passed over at work, or not noticed by this person, or not included in this group at church or in school or wherever? When those disappointments and failures, and as I said last week, when those strong emotions begin to come up, they're a clue. And they're an opportunity for the spell of the artificial God to be broken. Right? That moment in every fairy tale where we know it's the turning point towards something good, when the protagonist who's been under the spell of something finally wakes up and rubs their eyes and comes out of this fog or this sleep or this trance to realize what's actually been going on. When those failures or disappointment, or in fact, sometimes when we achieve everything we hoped we would and thought, if I could just get to this milestone, and we realize, I've gotten here and it's empty. Or perhaps the recognition and approval and attention we used to have, we don't have anymore because we're older, or someone's replaced us, or someone's come along at work or on our team who's better than we used to be, and we can't get it back, or no one remembers that we used to be significant, or no one around here at my church or in my work even knows what I used to do. When we have those moments of emptiness or disappointment, they're clues and opportunities that maybe we've been looking to something that's a good fuel, but a God that failed to save us. And we can come out of the haze to find what's really worth trusting in. I want you to listen to the words of one of Jesus' followers, John, to a group of Jesus followers a few years after the death and resurrection of Jesus, as he gives us a new way, a new fuel for life. Dear friends, I'm not writing a new commandment for you. Rather, it is an old one, the one you have had from the very beginning. This old commandment to love one another is the same message you heard before, yet it is also new. Jesus lived the truth of this commandment, and you also are living it. For the darkness is disappearing, and the true light is already shining. Do not love this world, nor the things it offers you. For when you love the world, you do not have the love of the Father in you. For the world offers only a craving for physical pleasure, a craving for everything we see, and a pride in our achievements and possessions. These are not from the Father, but are from this world. And this world is fading away, along with everything that people crave. But anyone who does what pleases God will live forever. This passage gives us two really compelling reasons to not let achievement and approval and recognition become gods or become things we trust in to save us, and then gives us a better way forward. The passage actually says, which is crazy because it's 2,000 years old, but it's describing the fact that we live in a world defined by external measures of success, what we can touch and see and what we can achieve. He said, that's the world you live in. But here's the problem. They don't deliver. Look what he says in verse 17. This world is fading away. My friends, that is a perfect description of how the curve for more and next and achievement and approval and recognition begins to flatten out. It's what economists call decreasing returns to scale. In other words, the more you have over time, the less you're getting from what you have. The more achievement, the more milestones, the more ambition, the more approval, the more words, the more likes, the more recognition you get, you're getting less and less from it. You need more and more of it. Because sure, you got promoted 5 years ago, but what's happened to you lately? Sure, you were recognized when you were younger in your 20s, but now you're in your 30s and now you're in your 40s. Or sure, you used to be able to kind of do this physically or prove that you were the best in your workplace, but now someone younger has come along. And sure, you had, when was the first like you ever got on your social media account? How much is that worth to you now? Nothing. Now you want tens. Now you want in the 50s. Now you want in the hundreds. Now you need in the thousands because you've built your life or your plan based on that. Right? We need more and more. The more we depend on it, the more we need it. But the more we get it, the less it delivers. It's fading. This isn't just true about happiness. It's true about money. It's true about every other measure we have: achievement, recognition, approval. It's fading away. It doesn't deliver. The appetite grows. Our stomach for it gets bigger, but the food satisfies less and less. And that's why he says in verse 15, do not love this world or the things it offers you. Do not love this world or the things it offers you. Now, we know this can't mean don't love people who are in the world with you. Don't love your friends. Don't love your boss. Don't leave it. Because it says God so loved the world. This same author says God so loved the world. So this clearly can't mean don't love the people of the world. What he's saying is don't love the way this world measures success. It can be a helpful fuel, but it's not a God. It'll fail you. So don't fall in love with it. Don't give your devotion, your attention to time, and all of your sacrifice of energy and stress and tears and hopes and dreams to what you will achieve, or the words of affirmation that other people may or may not give you, or the recognition you may or may not get. Don't love this world. It's fading away. It can't deliver. That's one of the reasons to not make it. It'll fail you. It'll never be enough. That's the first reason. But the second one is this. For verse 15, for when you love the world, you do not have the love of the Father in you. He's saying, look, it's not just that these things are fading away. They're not worth your affection and attention. When you love them, this is the second reason, you don't have the love of the Father in you. In other words, the love of the Father, for God so loved the world, God loves the world. When you love these measurements of success, you won't actually love people. Think about this. When you love the world, its measures of success, you cannot love people like the Father does. That's what he's saying. If you love these things, you don't have the love of the Father in you. If you're going to have the love of the Father in you, you can't love these measures of success. Because here's why. If we define success in terms of achievements, approval, and recognition, things that will really tell us who we are, that will heal our insecurity and our fear about ourselves and our sense of unworthiness or anxiety or stress or whatever it is, or looking to heal our wounds of rejection from our past. If we love those things, we will end up using people or resenting them. If we love those measures of success, we will end up using people or resenting them, because we will only value people insofar as their ability to like us. We will only value people whose opinion other people respect. And so we will try to get the opinions of only certain kind of people, and other people we will not care about. We will reject them. We won't actually love them. We'll just use them because we want those people to like us, because if they like us, that means we're worthy. If they approve of us, if they send, if they reshare, that means we're valuable. If they recognize us, if they say something publicly about us, then we know we're important. Right? Or we will just see the people in our lives. I'm going to cozy up to this person. I'm going to make sure I'm really nice to this boss, or I'm going to cultivate this relationship because it'll advance me in my career. And I'll make sure I'll talk to the better players on the team who know the coach or who are better athletes, because that will get me further along in my achievement. Because if those things are the things that I love, I will end up using people. I'll only see them insofar as they can get me further in the life that I want or not. Or I will resent them, because they're not giving me the words, and they're not giving me the recognition, and they're not giving me the attention, and they're not giving me the opportunity, and they're not seeing just how much I can offer. And so I begin to resent people, because what I love is achievement, approval, recognition. And if I do, John says, you won't have the love of the Father in you. Don't love these things that are fading away, because you'll actually fail to love people. Those are the two reasons to not make these things that can be useful fuel for a while, but really can fail us as a God. Instead, he shows us the better way. The better way is love. And he says, it's always been like this. I know I'm going to say this in a new way, or a new commandment. In other words, a new rule to live by, a new fuel for your life instead of ambition or recognition or approval or achievement. This new fuel, it's not actually new, it's old. In other words, he says, God's always been about love. This has been the most important thing to God from the beginning, to love him and to love others, to receive his love and to receive the love of others. That's always been the most important thing. But he says, I'm telling it in a new way. Well, look at this, verse 8. Jesus lived the truth of this commandment. I love this verse. He says, look, this has always been true about God, that God is love, but we forget it. We didn't know it, and we fall in love with the measure of success in the world. So God sent us his Son, who is a human, from God, but also from the earth, in a sense. So we could see, what does it look like when a human being does not love this world and the measures of success and achievement and approval and ambition and recognition, and when they actually live their lives loving people. Jesus lived it. And when you look at his life, he did not, the most famous and powerful person who's ever lived, right? Jesus, I mean, he's there. Top. Even if you're not sure about his godness and you have questions about all that, is there anyone that has had more influence in the shape of the world than Jesus? And yet he did not live his life by the fuel of achievement and approval and recognition. He actually seemed uninterested in achieving the standards that everybody else expected him to be. He was the son of a carpenter. He lived in a kind of subsistence way, would have gone to kind of Hebrew school and studied the Torah when he was young, but then moved on to just take over the family business because he lived in a poor family. He didn't have the standards of achievement that everybody else would look, or the kind of education that other people would recognize. In other words, they kept saying, who are you? You're a carpenter's son. He didn't seek the approval of other people. In fact, he seemed to be uninterested in the people who had the stamp of approval. He seemed to be uninterested in impressing all of the people who other people were impressed by. And he seemed to spend all of his time and energy in serving people that nobody was impressed with, that nobody would care whether those people approved of Jesus. All of Jesus' fans were all the people who go, those people like him? Can't be that important. He came from Nazareth. Oh, he's surrounded by tax collectors and sinners and sick people. Who cares? That his following or his fans were not anybody anyone considered valuable. And Jesus seemed to consider them very valuable because he was not motivated by approval. He was motivated by love. And the recognition that Jesus got was public shame, lifted up on a Roman cross, stripped almost naked, beaten and mocked. How do you like that for an award? Or for recognition of a job well done. Friends, this is the life that he says Jesus lived it a different way, and then God exalted him to become the most loved, adored, recognized person on the face of the earth. But it happened because of love. That love was the fuel of Jesus' life. And then he says in the same verse, Jesus lived the truth of his commandment, and you are living it now too. Be encouraged. You're not a fool for making this your fuel for life. Love instead of achievement, ambition, approval, and recognition. Those things, they're not bad. They're just not enough to fuel you for life. And if you trust them to, they will end up failing you. Jesus lived this. You're living it too. And here's what happens. When love becomes the fuel for our life, instead of achievement and approval and recognition. Think about this. Think about this shift in your own life. Why would you adopt this as a better way? When love becomes the fuel for our lives, look at, we strive to achieve for others' benefit. That you can begin to see your team, your workplace, wherever it is that you're striving for achievement, to actually use your energy to strive for others' benefit, to bless and benefit and achieve things for them instead of ourselves. It's a great shift when we begin to make love our fuel. That there are perhaps people in your workplace, on your team, whatever, that need you to channel your ambition for their benefit and their gain. Secondly, then we can use our words to approve and encourage and affirm others. Instead of constantly needing others to like us and bless us and affirm us, encourage us and notice us, we can use our words, our time, our attention, our likes, our notice to affirm and encourage others. Because we let go. I don't need this anymore. Now, instead of seeing my friend group or seeing my social media platform or seeing my world as a place where I get approval, how can I use it to affirm and bless and encourage others who need it? How can my words become healing? How can my acceptance help someone else who's felt rejected? How can my attention help someone else who feels unworthy and unnoticed? Because love is my fuel now. And then you and I get to live with God's "I already loved you" recognition. That the recognition we so want, we've already received. The scriptures say that as God has loved the Son, that we are heirs, we inherit that love, that God loves us with the same passionate love that he loves his Son, Jesus. I already loved you. I don't need you to achieve anything. Friends, what if we saw our places and our spaces in our communities, in our church and in our workplace and in our families as places where we can strive for others' benefit, where we can use our words for encouragement and affirmation, where we can live with the freedom of someone who is already recognized by the person of utmost importance. I'm going to leave you with this image. Many of you were following recently the Artemis space shuttle launch and path. During launch, and if any of you saw it, the rocket boosters on the side of the shuttle provide 75% of the fuel and the power that the rocket needs to actually launch for the first 2 minutes. After that time, if the rocket launchers stay attached to the shuttle, they begin to drag. They begin to actually work against launch. And they would begin over time to actually take the shuttle off orbit, off path, and would ultimately lead to that shuttle crashing and burning. Only if that fuel, which was useful, but for a very short time, only if those rocket launchers are thrown off, can the shuttle actually achieve its mission. Friends, I wonder if there are some of you here who want to just throw off this motivation and fuel that has been helpful and useful, let's say for a season or early in your life, of achievement and approval and recognition, but you realize this is dragging me down now. This is actually compromising my mission in life. This may make me crash and burn. I want to throw these off. If that's you, can I just ask you to do something courageous? We're doing this in all of our sites. Would you just stand? If you're like, that's like those rocket boosters. They were helpful for the first 2 minutes of life. I got to get rid of them. I don't want to be dragged down by the constant need for achievement and recognition and approval. If that's you, would you just stand? And just so you know, I'm standing with you. I want to pray for you. And even if you're not standing, you're like, yeah, that's me. I'm just too scared to stand. That's okay. This prayer is for you too. Jesus, you came and lived this life. You lived it for us in our shoes. You walked and worked in our shoes. You know what it feels like to want to be motivated by achievement, to live in a world that's saying you need to look like this and act like this and get to this level and make sure, and if we don't, nobody cares. You know what it's like to be a human being, to be motivated and need, in a sense, love, affirmation, affection, words of approval. You know what it's like to live in a world or to be someone who is passed over, looked past, not considered worth time or importance or rejected. But you lived a life of love and you came to free us from slavery to these gods that can never deliver. Helpful fuel for a short time, but ultimately will fail us. So Jesus, in the power of your name, I pray over all these people standing that they would be able to throw off what has become dead weight of needing to achieve and needing to hear words of approval or needing the recognition of other people. I pray healing from the past of words and wounds of rejection or what wasn't given or what was said or some of the lies that we grew up with of just thinking this is what's important, this is what's helpful in life. We pray healing and freedom from all those things in your name, Jesus. You are the God that truly saves us. You lived this commandment of love, this new way. And so you know what it's like, but you also have the power to free us from it because you conquered it for us. And so I pray for a new level of freedom and a new kind of fuel in the lives of our whole church to let our striving be for the good of others, to let our words be for the building up of others, and to be able to live on a daily basis under the approval and recognition of a God who already, always loves us. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen.